Welcome back, screenwriters, to Five Question with a Screenwriter. And the screenwriter I have with me today is Leah Simmons. Hi, Leah. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. All right, let's get started. So the first question I have for you is, what are three screenplays every new writer should read, in your opinion?
Oh, this is kind of tough because I feel like it really feels genre specific. When I'm a horror writer, so a lot of the stuff I read is horror genre. I guess beyond like specific scripts, I think a good challenge is to read things outside of the genre you write. I think some of the lessons I've learned the most have been from weirdly enough, I had decided to write a rom-com. So I read like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, which is actually really fun and like so outside my comfort zone. So I guess it's like kind of like not answering your question, but I think a lot of times we immerse ourselves in like the writing style and the genre we want to do. But I think a really great challenge is to read things outside of your comfort zone because again, I think we think a lot of the conventions we're trying to do are restrictive to the genre. And really it's just, it gives you a greater appreciation for the craft because you can really see things come through in, like I said, in genres and even movies that you wouldn't normally tune into. So again, not really probably an answer to the answer, but I think I've learned the most from things outside of horror is that rom-coms, dramas, action's still a little tough for me. But that would be my recommendation. And just, again, like reading lots and reading broadly.
So let me ask you this. So I know you write a lot of horror and science fiction. How'd you end up, writing horror and science fiction if you were reading outside your genre? I'm curious.
I think it's just because it's something I've always consumed. Like I was raised on like Tales from the Crypt and Goosebumps and R.L. Stine. Um, all of those were things that I just consumed my whole life, and so it felt like it was such a natural place for me to begin writing. And actually, it wasn't until somebody I knew had kind of said, "Hey, maybe you should read something more action oriented to kind of inform your sci-fi." And I'm trying to remember what the script was, but it kind of set me down that path of just like maybe I should start looking at things beyond my comfort zone to just sort of challenge that comfort zone that I've been in, just so that I can feel a little more challenged and maybe learn a thing or two. The thing that I feel like I'm always reminding myself is just how visual and experience driven writing is. I'm self-taught, so I didn't go to college to study screenwriting. A lot of what I learned was from reading things, getting kind feedback from people, and just kind of distilling what the things were I really liked about the screenplays that I enjoyed. And I found that as a visual like artist in my day job and just a visual thinker, the scripts that really painted these vivid scenes on the page was what I wanted to take to my horror because, obviously it's a visual medium as screenwriting, but, so much of horror is trick of the eye, subverting expectations, leaning into things that just look a little off. And the way you can weave that into pacing in horror can really just, kind of punch up the scenes to make them feel more horrific, make your audience really feel like they're in that moment and kind of transfer that emotion on the page.
Question number two. What is something a screenwriter will never learn in a book?
Oh, I think something that you're not gonna learn how to find your voice. And this was the most frustrating part. And because it's a thing that I feel like you struggle to define what it is. But when you found it. I've been very fortunate. I've had the same screenwriter for 4 years now. And I laugh because everyone did the guess a first page the other week, the podcast where they read one page. And I had somebody texting me as they listened live and said, I knew it was yours from the absolute first line. And
That's
like,
so
that's
cool.
voice, when you can tell, it feels like somebody is telling you a story on the page. And there's no way to cheat it. There's no way to teach people how to find their voice. It has to come from a combination of experience and just being vulnerable with your storytelling. You have a voice, and once that starts shining through in what you write, you up your game in screenwriting. And there's no other way to really describe it. You have to start working on it. And like I said, I wish that there was a magic formula or a book. I know it would be out there, but it's just going to take time.
How did you know you found your voice, or did someone tell you this is your voice?
I think people would tell me, and I think the moment I realized it was when I felt like I really had the freedom to write my action lines however I wanted to. Um, realized that, maybe this is a lot of writers. I kind of always felt like a little different and weird. It isn't until you become a writer that you're like, oh, this is a feature, not a bug. And once I started seeing the parts of my stories that could shine through in the action lines specifically, that's when I realized, like, oh, this is my voice. Like, this is the thing I need to lean into because it makes this interesting. It makes it unique. It makes it engaging. I'm from the Midwest. I'm sure this accent isn't throwing anybody off. So I was always trying to pull that back. That's not Hollywood. No one wants to hear, don't I know? So now it's like, oh no, I need that. Like, lean into that. That makes it unique. It makes it immersive. And so a big part of finding your voice is just figuring out those things that make you you and how you can inject that into your storytelling.
I love that. I love that. Those things that make you you. All right. Question number 3. What is the greatest character arc you've seen in a story?
Are you talking in a major film or like my own stories? Either?
Any story.
That's a great question. I think one of my favorite story arcs, just because I kind of have a soft spot for flat characters. I'm fascinated by them because I think it's a really hard story to tell when you have a character that doesn't really change, but the world and all the other characters are changed by them. So I'm going to give you a really left field movie because this is my comfort movie, Captain Ron, starring Martin Short. It's all about the mysterious captain. That it's Kurt Russell has got the eye patch and does not change throughout the movie. Like, he is just Captain Ron. And I think it's just such a fascinating story technique to have a character that has this very flat arc. I mean, I guess there's some little changes in there. But weirdly enough, it's such a uncommon story convention. I remember hearing a podcast where they were analyzing the Ghostbusters in the first movie being kind of flat characters in the sense that they don't really change a lot, but everyone changes around them. And, I'm always kind of fascinated by stories that I don't feel like I could tell myself. And so sometimes those characters, I guess, stick out to me more just because they are so unusual in a world where you see people so transformed, which is always an engaging thing on screen. But it's like, well, how do I take a character that, doesn't do that and still keep the audience engaged?
I haven't seen Captain Ron yet, but I know of it, so I'm going to have to watch that.
It's a little dated, I won't lie. Not all the humor lands, but the fashion is great.
All right. Question number 4. What was the first screenplay you wrote, and what was that writing process like?
Oh boy, it was terrible. I think the first screenplay I ever wrote was actually an adaptation of a serial I started writing. So I was a prose writer before I got into screenwriting, and I had written a story about there's a tourist attraction in South Dakota called Cosmos. It's not a very original shtick. They have balls roll uphill and lots of optical illusions. So the whole premise of the story was that it was an actual portal into a different universe. And to cover up the fact that it was a portal was to make this tourist attraction and monsters come out. It was a real hot mess. Structurally, giant blocks of action lines, just describing everything to oblivion. I don't think there was an exciting incident till page 30.
And so how did you learn about how to structure it? I'm curious.
I got some feedback on it. This is, when I first started screenwriting, my community was basically Reddit, and someone gave me some very detailed, very long, I would say probably very kind, but just at the time it was just clutch my pearls, oh, what do you mean you didn't like my screenplay? It's the best thing I ever wrote. But it made me realize okay, there's guardrails to this. It is storytelling, but there is a structure, there is a formatting that you need to learn. And so it became just reading articles and books and finding other screenwriters that I knew I could consistently get feedback from, because that was the other realization, was that, oh, you don't just write this and you're done. Oh, you just keep writing it and writing it and writing it. And that was an education for sure.
You're also author as well. Which came first?
Definitely prose. I used to write a lot of short stories. Always wanted to write a novel. And I had a friend that was putting together a podcast and was looking for scripts. And I'm like, oh, well, I could just adapt my short stories in a script. How hard would that be? Robert was really patient with me and helped me with the formatting and getting it all pulled together. And that was just kind of that eye-opening thing. Well, this is a really fun way to write a story. And then I wanted to challenge myself by writing, features and pilots. It actually wasn't until probably a year or two after I started screenwriting that I actually attempted to write a novel. So now I kind of bounce back and forth. It's really hard to write in present tense and then switch to something in past tense. But I do think it's just kind of more ways to do storytelling, which is always fun.
Any advice for that screenwriter that's trying to like eventually, I guess, produce something they've written?
Sure. Start with shorts. That's the easiest way to do it. I've had a lot of great luck reaching out to local directors and film students. They're looking for projects to shoot. Especially directors, they want to have a portfolio, and they would love to have a screenwriter that has a compelling, script for them to shoot. So if you can be mindful of budget with minimal locations and actors, keep special effects low, but something that's, snappy, something that would play well at festivals, like you will find people that want to produce it. And then from there, it's just kind of networking, finding people that are looking for projects and just getting your stuff out there.
This is the final question. Question number 5. You get to plan and go on a hangout / non-romantic date with your current main character. What does that date look like?
Oh boy, this is tough because my current main character is a cannibal. So so I mean, yeah, I feel like it'd be very much like a Hannibal-esque thing where we'd probably go some really fancy, and I probably shouldn't turn my back on them for very long because they're going to try to murder me and eat my body. So yeah, spoiler alert.
Oh no, that is funny.
I can't tell my family what I write. My family is usually pretty chill, but you can only tell me writing about cannibals and vampires and werewolves so many times before they just kind of glaze over.
So a first date with a cannibal would be very, very interesting. So
it would definitely only be a first date, is my guess.
Oh, that was a good one.
First time answer. Everyone else,
I did not expect that.
I mean, it's kind of surprising the script if that helps.
Yeah. This has been 5 questions with Leah Simmons. Leah, thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. I do want to ask you, are you writing anything at the moment?
Yeah, I'm working on, a cannibalistic feature because it's heavily inspired by like 90s Tales from the Crypt. So lots of blood, gore, sexiness. Like I just really wanted to revel in something really gross and gritty. So, but it's been really fun to write. And then just always revising projects. I've got some shorts that I'm trying to work on. Again, I've got 2 local filmmakers that I've got a great working relationship with that said, hey, fall's coming up, let's shoot some shorts. So now I got to write something for them.
And then what's a recent TV show or film you've seen you would recommend to our viewers?
I'm obsessed with Longlegs. So if you haven't seen it, you should totally see it. It was so much fun to see in the theater. Otherwise, I have a 6-year-old who is obsessed with Godzilla, and I have to say, I think I've finally been won over by Shin Godzilla. I don't think it got as much like love because it's a little offbeat for a Godzilla movie, but I do recommend checking out Shin Godzilla if you have slept on that one and you need to complete your Godzilla viewing experience.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Leah, LEAH_from, or pretty much anywhere. If you look for Leah from South Dakota, I'm like the only one. So there's not too many other Leahs anywhere, but definitely not that many in South Dakota. Otherwise, I do have a book out. My first novel came out this last month, Thorna. It's off-brand, a YA fantasy novel. It's available on Amazon. If you just search for Thorna, you'll find it. So that's been kind of a cool experience too. So that's pretty much what I'm up to now.
Yeah, I'll make sure to link the book in the description below.
You're awesome. Thank you.
Of course, not a problem. All right, Leah, thank you so much again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.